So if you're someone that watches the news, right, and depending on which news station that you watch, they can't stress enough how inflation isn't all that bad. The fact that it's between what 3.7, 3.9%, it's really not all that bad, right? The inflation rate is going down, but if you actually talk to people, the people that actually living through this stuff, they'll tell you that inflation rate feels way more than 3%, right? Especially if you compare the stuff that you bought today than what you bought a year ago or maybe 2 years ago, then it's way more than that 3.8%. Right, but the news will tell you otherwise. They'll tell you that the inflation rate is going down, right? The rate at which stuff are increasing. Maybe that's true, but if you compare things that what you bought today than what you bought years ago, it's much more, right? Whether you're buying food and energy prices, and of course when it comes to housing, whether you're purchasing a home or you're looking to rent, right? So in this video, we're going to talk specifically to those who are renting. Okay, so because in this article on the Hill.com, it says rent has risen faster than wages in most U.S. cities, right? And according to a report on Zillow, it says that rent surged 30.4% nationwide between 2019 and 2023, while wages rose 20.2% over that same period. I'm gonna repeat that. It said rents surged 30.4% nationwide between 2019 and 2023, while wages rose 20.2% over that same period. Now, if you do the math, that just doesn't make sense. The fact that rents are increasing at a higher rate than people's wages. So if you're someone that's probably got an increase in your wages, because for a lot of people that they did occur that, right? They probably got a bump in their hourly wage, or they got a bump on their salary. They probably got a bonus. So people felt like maybe they're making more money. However, when you look at their bank account, they're still finding out that they're still living paycheck to paycheck. They find that they still have no money, and you're trying to figure out why, right? Even though maybe like the food go to the grocery store, maybe things have leveled off, but when you see things, when something like part of your biggest budget, which is your rent, your housing, is going to be your biggest part of your budget going up, and then the fact that your wages aren't keeping up at that pace, then yes, you're going to feel that pinch. Okay, you're gonna feel like, all right, look at, even though I've made more money, I'm still not. I feel like I'm struggling. I'm still living that paycheck to paycheck, and that could be for a lot of reasons, right? Depending on people's finances. Some people are managing their money better than others. Some people have a boatload of debt, so that could be as well. It's important to make sure you keep a budget so you actually know what's going on when it comes to your finances. But for a lot of people, and you see it all over the place, like especially if you go on TikTok, you go on social media, you hear all these people talking about how their rent has increased so much, right? It's like, okay, like my lease is up and now it increased another $100, $200, $300, even more, depending on where they live. And you're like, yo, okay, can someone sustain this? It's very difficult to do that. Okay, and this is a big part of that. Like rents are surging at such rates like that, it's very hard to keep up. Right. So another part is this article says since 2019, rents have outpaced wages in 44 of the 50 largest U.S. metro areas, with renters in some cities faring much worse than others, Zillow found. So obviously, depending on where you live, right, especially if you live in bigger cities, right, like New York, California, or sometime in parts of Miami. You're going to see higher increases because, a lot of people there. A lot of these are places where a lot of people like to live. There's high demand for the properties there. So you're obviously going to see a higher increase. But you're seeing for a lot of people that the rents are increasing at a much higher rate than those than their wages. And that's just unsustainable. Like that's just not going to work. Okay. And if you continue reading this article, all right, it says, all right, so as American families struggle to keep up, more have been pushed to their financial limits. Half of all renters in the U.S., a record high 22.4 million households, now spend more than 30% of their income on rent and utilities, according to a recent Harvard study. And if you understand personal finance, most people will recommend that your housing, whether it's a mortgage or your rent, is no more than 30% of your income, right? Your monthly income. And for a lot of people, they're finding that it's more than that. And I understand that for a lot of people that it's easy to just blame like landlords and say like, oh, landlords are greedy, that they're gouging, but you have to also understand what they're going through as well, right? It's not only you that's incurring a cost when it comes to your rent, but there's a reason why a lot of them increase their costs, because for them, their cost is taxes and insurance. Now maybe now you're probably looking at mortgages. Yeah, mortgages stay the same over a 30-year period, right? They're fixed amount. But what's going up for, especially for a lot of people, is taxes and insurance, right? So as a landlord, they have to transfer that cost over to the tenant, right? So therefore, that's a big reason that, you know, for a lot of people, that your rents are increasing. Not to say that there aren't landlords doing that, but I think for a majority of them, it's mainly because taxes and insurance are going up. Their costs are going up. The cost of maintaining that property is going up. So they have to transfer that cost over to the tenant. And that's what's causing for a lot of people their rents to go up, and it's tough for a lot of people. It's tough for the renters, tough for the people that own the property, and everybody is dealing with this increase in costs when it comes to housing, right? Everybody's dealing with these costs. It's not easy for anyone, whether your taxes and insurance going up, your rents are increasing. It's tough for anyone, especially dealing in this economy. And it's important for you to make sure that you do a couple of things. You want to make sure, obviously, your debts. If you're gonna find a way to get through this, right, you gotta make sure your debts are low, right? Make sure your credit card debts are gone, and if you have student loan debt, that's something obviously you want to make sure that you're taking care of as well. If you're someone that has a lot of student loan debt, it's gonna be more difficult. So that's gonna be even more reason for you to make sure you're managing your money properly. As difficult as it may seem, you have to do it. You gotta make a lot of cuts, whether it's your TV packages, whether it's going out. You have to find a way, because obviously, if your math is not, if you're spending more than you make, then clearly the math doesn't work, and it's important to make sure you keep a budget, right? I understand people want to go on vacations, they want to do the things. It's going to be difficult, so you got to make sure that your finances are in order, right? And another thing is living alone. I think for a lot of people, especially if you're renting, living alone is going to be difficult as well. And this is something I've talked about in my other videos, where it's going to be hard to live alone for a lot of people. Not to say that you can't, it's not impossible, but you got to obviously make sure that your finances are in order and that it fits your budget. But if you're someone that's struggling, living paycheck to paycheck, and you're finding that it's very difficult to make ends meet and buy the things that you need, then you might have to think about considering getting a roommate. It's for a lot of people, for most people, it's going to be difficult to just live on your own. Whether you're living with friends, whether you're living with family, whether you're living with a spouse, you have to make sure that you have somebody else that's going to help you reduce that burden when it comes to paying your housing expense. And that's just the reality for a lot of people. Like, I understand people don't want to deal with that reality, but if you're going to weather through this storm, like, we don't know how long this is going to happen. We don't know how long. I know for a lot of people that, well, for many people that say we're not in a recession, whether we're in one, whether we're not in one, people are dealing with their own different types of recession. You see layoffs happening. So clearly things are going on, and you have to make sure you prepare for that. Right? You have to make sure you prepare for that, especially when it comes to your finances. Because if you're someone that's struggling with your finances and you have credit card debt where the money that you could be saving is going to institution, then it's going to be hard for you to get through these tough times. Okay, and obviously for rent, if it's supposed to account for about 30% of your income. That's a big chunk. That's a big part of your income. So you want to make sure at least get that managed. And if rents are increasing at this level rate, you got to make sure you got some wiggle room where you can make payments. You got to make sure you got a roof over your head. So you got to make sure you you create that budget and just try to strip down as much expenses as you can. And if you've done that, then you just got to find a way to increase your income, right? As tough as it may seem, you have to find a way to increase your income, whether it's getting a second job, whether it's starting a business, whether it's getting a gig job, a side hustle. You got to do whatever you can to make sure that you're obviously living within your means when it comes to your expenses, right? So, and the cost of living. So those are my thoughts. I'm interested to hear your thoughts. Make sure to leave a comment down below, hit the like button, share. And if you haven't done so, make sure to subscribe, right? So guys, take care and have a good one. Later.